Prime Minister Hubert Ingraham arrived in Grand Bahama today to review the damage caused by the strike of multiple tornadoes that touched down on this island Monday, March 29th. The sudden severe weather reportedly impacted the Freeport Container Port and various residential areas in Freeport, including those near Port Lucaya Marketplace. Besides some trees and small structure damage throughout the city, the most extensive damage was at Freeport Container Port in Freeport Harbour. The collapse of a massive crane resulted in the deaths of 3 employees and several other serious injuries. During the Prime Minister's emergency trip to the island, he visited Rand Memorial Hospital, where he stopped in at the patient wards to see the injured and paused at the hospital chapel to speak quietly with family members. The Prime Minister, along with an entourage of cabinet ministers and senators, took an extensive tour of Freeport Container Port. At that time, the group saw a number of overturned containers that had been strewn about the storage yard. The container port was directly hit by at least one tornado that struck shortly before noon Monday and left widespread destruction in its wake. The container port utilizes 10 post-Panamax cranes to move containers off and on ocean-going ships. Of these 10, 5 were damaged in the storm, with one being toppled and crashing to the ground under its own weight. The affected cranes were pushed along their rails despite having the brakes engaged. This resulted in the ground being torn up and the wheels, brakes, and support system of the cranes being damaged. CEO of Freeport Container Port, Gary Gilbert, explained how the cranes were affected during the storm.
What happened is when the cyclone hit the tornado, it started pushing crane number 6, and crane number 6 brakes went on, but it started so much force and velocity that it started pushing it into 7, 8, 9, and finally 9 pushed 10 over into the water and onto the quay deck here. All of the brakes have been burned out, and as you saw from the pavement, you'll see that from the pavement that they jumped their tracks and were dragging and tearing up the tracks.
This damage, as well as carrying out assessment and repair work needed, has resulted in the temporary interruption of all services at Freeport Container Port. Container Port officials advised GBTV that their head office in Hong Kong had been in direct contact with the Bahamas government, and every effort was being made to restore service at the port as soon as possible. The company also advised that counseling has been provided for the families of those that perished and were injured, as well as ongoing counseling for staff at the container port. The Prime Minister stopped in Hepburn Town, 8 Mile Rock, where he reviewed damage caused to some of the homes in that area by the tornadic activity. After viewing the affected structures, the Prime Minister spoke to local residents. In Grand Bahama for GBTV, I'm Olivia Dorset.